new members, and to the guests that have joined us today. We're so happy to have you here. Look, whether you're here for education or other professional development, or you're here for networking, mentorship, whatever reason that you're here, I hope you find us to be a welcoming community, grassroots community, where we can all share in our experiences, lean in whenever we need help, provide help when others are leaning in. Just so happy to be here with all of you and to be on this journey with you. We're so glad that you're tapping into our community and our resources, because it's absolutely designed with you in mind. And with that being said, if you've been here for a little while and you're like, gosh, I wish they had, shoot me a note or put something in the chat. It would be great to have your thoughts there. I'm super excited to just introduce our two guests today. One of them you'll certainly find as a favorite amongst us and a returning guest, and that's Carrie Santiago. Carrie is with Aramark. She also has joined Karima Goodwin as part of our professional development team. So she's bringing all the stuff wrapped in one. And along with Verlene Tyler, she and Verlene are in Toastmarkers, and that's a division of Toastmasters International. I got a chance to skim their presentation yesterday, and I can tell you already, one of the things that I really love about it, just in addition to the energy and passion they bring to this subject, is the fact that you get a lot of tips about how to present or how to have confidence in public speaking. But there's not a lot out there that really lays it on the line for what it is to be a woman in that arena. So no further ado, mic drop moments, empowering females to speak with confidence. May I please introduce to you Carrie Santiago and Verlene Tyler. Ladies, take it.
Thank you so much, Julie, and good afternoon, everyone. It's definitely a privilege to be back here again. It seems like just yesterday, Julie convinced me to come on and really talk about some very vulnerable topics. So we're not going to go completely down my personal journey today, but one thing I'm really passionate about is Toastmasters. So again, I'm Carrie Santiago. I work for Aramark. I am a director of distribution. My region is the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. In addition to my role, I've been part of Toastmasters since 2009. As Julie mentioned, we have a club within our Aramark organization called Toastmarkers. And if you're not with Aramark, you can definitely find a local club near you. So at the end of the presentation, we're going to put up a link. If you're so compelled or inspired to join a club, we'll let you know how you can find one on your own. So if we could just advance to the next slide. So I'll just quickly run through the agenda, and then we'll definitely give Verlene a chance to introduce herself. But we have a few goals today. So one, we want to share about Toastmasters as a resource. It's a very it comes with nominal fees. So it's something that is accessible to really everyone. So we want to share that this resource exists, whether you may have a corporate club or a community club. And then we want to give you some really practical public speaking and leadership tips. And then I think one of the most favorite parts of these meetings is the networking portion, which we're going to pair with some impromptu speaking practice at the end. So don't get scared and jump off the line. There's definitely no pressure to speak if you're not comfortable. So we're going to touch on a little bit just being a woman and public speaking, because that comes with its own challenges on its own. Again, what is Toastmasters? And then Verlene's really going to dive into those practical tips around executive presence and gravitas, which can be such a mysterious topic. I mean, there's so many different opinions on what that means, and we want to hear what that means to you as well. And then tips on speaking with diverse audiences. And then I'm sure there's plenty of salespeople on the line, tips on how to give sales pitches, and then wrap it up with some networking and impromptu speaking. So you can go to the next slide. So before we get too deep in, who here has heard of Toastmasters? So there should be a poll in the chat. Just let us know. Yes, you've heard of it. And I mean, before I mentioned it today, would be good to know, just to hear who has heard about Toastmasters, and then we can kind of frame up how much detail we dive into. So it looks like we're already at 72% of people having heard about it. So I think that's fantastic news. And for those who haven't heard about it, we'll definitely give you some good information today. All right, so I think we have the majority of the results in. So at this point, I'll pass it over to Verlene for a quick introduction. Verlene?
Sure. Thank you, Carrie, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone. My name is Verlene Tyler. I work within our facilities line of business, supporting them through technology and enabling their line of business through tech. I'm also a member as well as an officer within Toastmasters at Airmark, holding the Sergeant at Arms and Secretary officer roles. Nice to meet everyone.
Thanks for being here with me, Verlene. You can hop to the next slide. So as I mentioned, being a female, as we all know, we're here, and I know Julie and the team share so much great insight on how we can navigate different areas. But one thing is on the public speaking note. So are we even heard as much as men? So did a little bit of research, and whether it's the softer tone we may have or a high-pitched voice, those are things that can naturally just allow people to talk over us, or maybe just not hear us, especially in a noisy environment. So that's something we may not realize that we should be mindful of. And then just being interrupted more often. I mean, how many people here have experienced that, just being interrupted? And it's so often I can be in a meeting and everyone has an opinion, but my voice sometimes doesn't project in a room. So you really have to just dive in and make your voice heard, unfortunately. And then using tentative language, asking for permission, not sounding certain. We can get interrupted in those ways too. So when I talk about tentative language, it's, sitting there and maybe you have an opinion and you're the expert, but then you start to question yourself and you're almost asking for someone to kind of co-sign or, substantiate what you're stating. So in that way, we may not be taken as a credible resource as well. And then some interesting stats here, as you can see on the right, and I know it's a little bit dated. It went from 1970 to 2011, but a researcher was tracking in Vermont town halls, just one, the number of female speakers present, and then two, how many speaking opportunities were they given during the session. And it's great to see it definitely grew from 20% up to almost 40%. And again, it's a little bit dated, and hopefully that number has continued to grow, but just to call awareness to maybe we're not even heard or given the chances to be heard. So those are just definitely some disadvantages that we may experience, but the good news is there is help, and we're going to give some practical tips as we move forward here. So we can go to the next one. So we're going to do another quick question. So just in the chat, if you can think of a memorable female speaker, who comes to mind that you can think of having a mic drop moment? And it could be someone famous, it could be someone in your personal network. And as you're giving some thought to that, I asked Verlene to come up with her own mic drop moment, and I'll share one of my own here, which you think about mic drop moment. I don't know if I really had a grand stage to have that kind of moment, but there were two things that came to mind for me. And one was Julie really pushing me out of my comfort zone, which I need. We all need a Julie in our life. And I'm sure she's happy to be that person. There's so many people here who can be your Julie as well. But she pushed me to come on a few months ago and really talk about some vulnerable professional experiences and personal experiences. And my first instinct was no. And then I knew that I was doing this avoidance behavior, just not really embracing or having the confidence. And I did it, and it was uncomfortable. But when I tell you after that session, how many people reached out and could relate to my story, it really just reminded me that no matter how my experiences may seem like, they're just my experiences. I don't think they're any that big of a deal, but the people who can relate to you in one way or another and the connections that you can make, it goes such a long way. And the beautiful relationships that can stem from just using our voices. So Verlene, do you want to share what you would consider a mic drop moment?
Sure, and certainly not a physical mic drop or grand experience similar to yourself, Carrie. But I'd say about a year ago, of course, still working within a hybrid model professionally, both in person as well as virtually, and being asked to have a little bit more engagement, or I should say a lot more engagement with one of our vendor partners, and the ask to contribute more, to engage more, to interact with them more. And my first thought was, well, my manager, that's primarily one of his key areas of responsibility. Why do I necessarily need to take that on? And not so much, it wasn't so much that I didn't necessarily want to engage with the vendor. It's the fact that one of our vendors, this particular vendor, was adamant about being on camera every call, right? Regardless if it was some sort of formal check-in or a progress update or just a quick call. And I wasn't necessarily comfortable with that. Being on, not necessarily only on the video call, but as well as knowing that I was empowered to make decisions. I was empowered to not only interact with the vendor itself, but at the level of interacting with the CEO. And again, not to place any sort of weight on roles within an organization, but it was a first for me. And knowing that I had the support not only of my manager, and I was voluntoed in some ways in a very nice way, being of course, that was a part of my overall development and continues to this day, that it's okay to take charge. It's okay to represent our team, of course, under the leadership of my manager, and knowing he just had that confidence in me to do so was certainly a stretching moment, but certainly served me well through this day. So I would definitely consider that, just interacting with a level of not only leaders, but as well as being in a hybrid world that I didn't necessarily do in the past, or wasn't familiar or even accustomed to doing in the past.
I love that, Verlene. And we've been partners in Toastmasters for a number of years now. And a lot of times we have a voice and we're intimidated to use it for whatever reason. And once we kind of break through that fear and really grow into our empowerment and trusting ourselves, it can go such a long way. So I was just checking out the chat, and we can go to the next slide. And I think a lot of people will be happy to see very familiar faces. A lot of the names that were dropped in the chat, you'll see on the screen. And the good news is there's not just 21 inspirational speakers around the globe. There are so many more, and I could only fit so many faces on the screen. So as many disadvantages as we may have, and as many things that we need to overcome, there are so many people that have gone ahead of us and have delivered such an amazing message, whether it's, I mean, there's so many different topics here, but you'll see Alice Walker, Brene Brown, Carla Harris, Ariana Huffington, and there were two quotes that really popped out that I wanted to share, which I definitely think are mic drop moments. So we have Alice Walker, winner of the American Book Award, Pulitzer Prize, renowned author, activist, and educator. And her quote that really struck a chord with me was, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking that they don't have any. So this is exactly what we're talking about. We all have a power, even if we don't recognize what that is. And then Ariana Huffington, this quote, fearlessness is like a muscle. The more I exercise it, the more natural it becomes to not let my fears run me. So those two things just really resonated with me, and I wanted to share. So when I think about what do all these women have in common, they constantly look for growth. They never settle for less than what they deserve. They forge their own authentic path, and many of them are riveting storytellers. So we may not have the opportunity to give a TED Talk or be on a grand stage, but we all have a message that's valuable to someone. So we just really need to recognize that. And go to the next one. This one's a little bit more near and dear to my heart. So you may not have seen this face before, but this is Helen Blanchard. She was the first female Toastmaster. And when she joined, she had to join under the name Homer because in 1970, it was still an all-male organization. So when I think about 1970, even though I wasn't on this earth at that point in time, it really doesn't seem like it was that long ago. So to think that even a public speaking organization didn't allow women in until 1973 is kind of a shocking number for me. But she didn't let that stop her. She found a way to join. She joined under the name Homer, and eventually she went on to become the first female president of Toastmasters. So I just love this story, and I definitely wanted to share that. And the other thing I wanted to share is that, you know, we all have self-doubts, but if you do start to doubt yourself, I know FWA, there are so many women here who will remind you who you are and what you're capable of. So just wanted to toss that in there. Okay, on the next slide, so we can, and just stay here for a second, Kendra, thank you. So what is Toastmasters? So it was founded in 1924. So if we think about the stat that I just mentioned, how they didn't even let women in until 1973, they were around for far longer than that, and to this day it continues growing. There's over 270,000 members across over 14,000 clubs across 148 countries. So this is a very credible organization. They're a leader in providing dynamic communication and leadership skill development. So definitely very credible, a lot of great resources, a lot of great people to learn from. So we can go to the next one. And this just highlights some of the things that you can learn within Toastmasters. When I first joined, I was someone who was afraid to even say my name and title going around a room of people. I remember the most, I guess, troubling public speaking moment of my life was going around the table just doing an introduction. Like, I know my name, I know where I work, but for some reason everything just went gray and I was talking, but I had no idea what I was even saying. So after this meeting, I said to my coworker, did I sound strange? Like, did anything strange happen in there? He said, no, why? You were fine. You sounded confident and articulate. And I said, well, something happened there that's never happened before. And I since realized it was maybe a slight panic attack, which had never happened. But I knew from that day forward, I needed to get a hold of this if I wanted to grow in my career. We have to be able to communicate. So I joined a club. I think I played the role of timer for, I don't know, probably close to a year. That was the only role I would even dip my toe in, to time how long people were speaking during a meeting and give a very quick report out at the end of the meeting. But there's so many things you can learn within Toastmasters. You can certainly give speeches to improve your public speaking. You can take on leadership roles, as Verlene and I, we sit on the board of our Toastmasters Club. You can practice giving and writing speeches. And then one thing that's uncomfortable is to give and receive feedback. There's continuous giving and receiving of feedback, just building self-confidence and self-awareness, things that we may not be aware of, and networking in a supportive environment. So the thing is, everyone in a Toastmasters meeting is there to develop something. No one has any ego. It's just, how can we work together to be better on whatever area that we're looking to grow. And then really just being able to maximize your potential. Communication is key in any path that we take professionally, and a lot of times even personally. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Verlene, who is going to give you some practical tips on public speaking. Verlene?
Sure thing. Thank you, Carrie. And as you can see here, you can go ahead and advance. Thank you, Kendra. Even before we dive into this content here, just a little story of myself when it comes to being involved in Toastmasters and why I decided to take this step. It was certainly out of necessity, similar to Carrie's journey, becoming nervous, anxious when it was time for me to present or even engage outside of a formal presentation or a formal meeting. Certainly was a nudge to take charge and work on this area if I knew that I needed this in order to grow as well as advance my career. So with that, Toastmasters, in our case, Toastmarkers, is that place, is that safe place to develop those skills and to really combat those feelings of doubt, self-doubt, or uneasiness, if you will. And with that, yes, within Toastmasters, there's a core concentration on presentation, formal presentations, ad hoc communication. But if we wanted to really sum up the experience within Toastmasters, and of course, which is super fitting for this topic today, is around this idea of executive presence. And executive presence touching not only how you interact, how you communicate, as you can see here, but as well as this thing and this notion known as gravitas. And just to help demystify that a little bit, within you as a leader, there are three core areas, potentially even more, but three that we've narrowed here. And as you can see here, gravitas has and holds a lot of weight. And we'll get into that in a minute, why that holds such great weight as you think of executive presence and really what that means to you. And then secondly here, communication. Yes, formally speaking, formally presenting, your coffee chats, your network sessions. I mean, whether it's email, Teams, you're constantly communicating across your various functions. And then of course, your appearance, how you show up in a physical sense, certainly your not so much in a sense of your clothing, but just how you present yourself, right? And if we can advance to the next slide here, when we think of executive presence, when we think of having a notion of how do you show up, what does your work, your contribution say, even if you weren't in a room, or if they had, if your words, if your work could come to life with words and you're not in a room, what would that say, or what would they say about you? So just curious here before we dive into gravitas, what does executive presence mean to you? You want to go ahead and post that in the chat. Just curious here. I'm sure it would tie into what we're covering here as we continue to advance, but I don't know if there's anything coming through the chat just yet. But knowing executive presence, just simply put, how I conduct myself. Am I taken seriously when I walk into a room, even before I open my mouth, even before I start and go through my agenda, what I'm here to deliver, without anyone knowing who you are? What does that say about you? Anything, Carrie? Let me see if I can.
Yep. So
I have it here. Oh, confidence. Okay.
Authenticity.
Absolutely.
Charisma. Clear, direct, confident.
Absolutely.
Controlling the room. Articulating.
Absolutely. Thank you. Those are great feedback, and thank you for contributing to that. And certainly you can certainly go ahead and advance to the next slide. That's essentially what it is. We're communicating with confidence. Yes, across all of our different varying roles of responsibility, we all can share one thing, regardless if you're at the top of the company, mid-manager, entry level. Within our functions, we have to deliver. There's a certain level of expectation in our output and what we're producing, from finance to technology to food service, supply chain. Again, different sectors, but at the end of the day, we have to deliver. And how you deliver, how you show up matters. And with this idea of executive presence, if we just go back a bit here, knowing from that pillar, there was such a high weight, I believe it was 67%, which was tied to gravitas. Now, this might be a familiar term to you, or this might be a new term to you, but if you can take a look here on your screen, we've displayed a half a wheel of several different characteristics. It's not to say this is an all-inclusive list. However, a few years ago, there was an Indeed poll taken from top executives, close to 300 top senior executives. And this question was posed to them as well. What is gravitas? What's important? If you had to explain this in a very short and concise way. And as you can see here, the top 6 were their key characteristics. Now, for the sake of time, I won't dive into each and every one. However, for the context of this meeting, I'd like to point out 2. When we tie this back to executive presence, knowing that gravitas falls within that pillar, or as a pillar, I should say, how do you react under pressure? How do you respond when there's an emergency or when there's an opportunity? Do you keep your cool? Do you wear your feelings on your sleeve? Do you respond in an angry tone? And again, this could be, it's not if or when, right? an emergency is going to occur, but this is just something that we work through daily, right? We're working through our respective responsibilities. An email comes across your desk, or a Microsoft Teams message, or Skype, or whatever that channel of communication that you use day to day. And do you panic? Do you figure out, okay, you acknowledge what it is, you come up with a game plan, and then you execute? That is key. It's not to say it holds more weight than the others, but I do believe in a sense of executive presence, how I carry myself, how, others view me and taking me seriously as a professional. I do believe as we continue to grow within our respective careers, we have to be very mindful of that, how we react, because it's not if, again, it's when they happen. And then the second point that I'd like to highlight as well, as leaders, as influential women here on this call, we have to drive strategies, even if it's as an individual contributor or as a leader of a team. And as you're driving those forward, are you clear? Are you able to communicate clearly to your team the direction you're going? Why are you doing this, right? And I know we toss around the term leader, not we, but at times the term is tossed around so loosely. As a leader, you want to make sure you're very clear in your delivery, and that says a lot about you. Again, as we can see here, and tie this back to executive presence, it's all about how me producing this vision, me producing this roadmap, this path. Is it just words on the screen? Is it just words within a presentation? Or am I able to pair that with how I conduct myself, how I deliver, and how serious I'm taken from day in and day out? So again, gravitas, certainly not a word to fret from, but it really just boils down to my work ethic, your work ethic, how clear you're communicating, how others view you as you deliver day in and day out. And again, just a matter of how you conduct yourself. And as we continue to advance here, again, not being frightened from the word, or being frightened from the word, I should say, but there are times where you're leading a team, or there are cases where you're within a matrix organization similar to myself, where I don't have direct reports, but I do have influence and I do have authority to make certain decisions, right? As well as lead without a formal title, or lead without a formal team, I should say. But there are team members assigned to initiatives and projects that I'm driving and that I'm executing against. And even with that, similar to what Carrie shared earlier, when you find yourself in those moments, are you sure of yourself? Are you clear? Are you able to communicate what needs to get done? Are you second guessing yourself? I mean, you're placed in these roles, in these various, positions for a reason. And even with a particular title, with a team, without a team, at the end of the day, we're all driving towards execution. We're all driving towards delivering to whatever our goals and objectives are within our particular functions, as well as broadly across our various companies. And Toastmasters reemphasizes the importance of how to clearly communicate your message across, how to clearly navigate organizations as a leader, as having a formal title and or without a formal title as well. And there are just some tips here just to keep in mind. We're probably already doing them, but just to specifically call them out. Am I clear? Am I developing that camaraderie between my team, or for those who are assigned to this particular initiative? Can I disagree with and agree? Are there levels of compromise? How am I influencing change without a formal title? Do I necessarily always need to lean on my manager, or have I earned enough respect, enough influence, enough gravitas, if you will, to get things done, even without having someone have to hammer things to get done on my behalf? And then again, just finishing up here, at the end of the day, we're executing regardless. If I have a title, if I have a team, or if I don't, we're all here doing the same thing. And just re-emphasizing that. And that comes off with how you conduct yourself, how you communicate, and just continuing to be that change and influencing that change in this sense, with or without a title. And then as we advance here, you want to be mindful of in formal settings, similar to one in this setting, or if you're in a room, mindful of who's in the room, who's on the line here. Do you have entry level, mid-level management, senior executives? How you respond to them, how you interact, preparing your content, preparing how you're going to communicate with them. And sometimes in that space, you might need to tailor how you communicate. And I know this might seem a lot mentally to juggle, but trust me, Carrie and I, it's critical and it's important as you continue to advance and grow professionally, as well as you grow your career. And some things here that I know I need to do, slow down a bit, right? Just speaking a little too fast because you're either nervous or you're not sure, or you just want it to get over with and finish, but you definitely need to learn how to slow down, speak clearly, speak your thoughts across. What do you need to say? What would you like your audience to walk away from a meeting or an interaction or a coffee chat away with? And again, just being mindful of that, not being too formal or too lax. Of course, when there are times, I believe a gentleman mentioned just casual Fridays, that's absolutely fine. But then there's a time and a place for everything, right? So if you know you're meeting, you're with senior execs, you're with a client, how do you show up? How you show up matters, just tying that back to appearance, right? So again, just being mindful of some things here. And as we continue to advance, similar to knowing who's in the room, right? You also want to be mindful when you have that formal presentation where you need to drive a strategy forward, or you need to drive a use case forward, or something that you're pitching, something that you're proposing, albeit in sales or just as a leader, as a contributor. You want to move or shift your area of focus in a different direction. You need to communicate that. And typically you communicate that through presentations, right? PowerPoint. It might vary depending upon the organizations, but for the sake of time, without diving too far into these, you just re-emphasizing the purpose. Why are we here? What do you want your audience to walk away with? Being mindful of who's in the room during the presentation, but as well as in advance, right? What are those 2 or 3 bullet points that you need to drive home? What do you want your audience to walk away with? Not to be too concentrated on text heaviness, right? You want to make sure it's clear, it's simple, say a lot with less, if you will, just keeping that in mind, and just leaving enough time, typically at the end or even throughout your presentation, for that engagement, that Q&A period. And again, I would imagine some of these tools and suggestions that we're stepping through here, you're probably doing them today, or you're probably doing them and you're not conscious that, hey, this is actually tied to a particular skill or a particular area as you're engaging and interacting and leading with confidence and purpose. But again, just some gentle reminders here as you interact and continue to lead with confidence. And just a few other things here. If we could just go ahead and proceed. I'm going to try to wrap this up, just being conscious of time. The great benefit, I would say, within Toastmasters is the fact that, yes, there are periods where you have formal presentations that you plan well in advance and you practice and you rehearse. But then there are also moments where there's a question directly within the meeting without any advance notice of what the question and or topic is. And you just have to provide a response, 1 to 2 minutes. And it's so critical, although sometimes it might seem silly, or yes, we have a great time with it. If you just think about, as a professional, as a woman here and or man here as well, you're leading teams, you're leading initiatives, you're driving strategy forward. You'll have your standard meetings, right? You'll have those scheduled meetings to discuss status, to discuss decisions, next steps. And then you're going to have those moments where you get that email, you get that Teams message, that phone call. Hey, you have a minute? Can I hear your thoughts on this? What's your opinion? And in that moment, because of course you weren't expecting it, how do you react? It goes back to that executive presence, gravitas. Do you flare up? Are you anxious? Or do you take a minute to gather your thoughts and you respond accordingly? And within Toastmasters, this segment this time during a meeting known as impromptu speaking allows you to work on just that, because we know it's going to happen, not if, but when it's going to happen. So again, just some practical steps here. Practice. I know it's kind of hard to practice when you don't know what the question is, but just practice. And really, to tie this up here, just being ready, prepared with whatever you have on your deck, your day-to-day. At any point, someone could ask you a question. If you have 5 initiatives that you're working on daily, just be mindful of where you are, your status, any thoughts, any suggestions, right? Just always have a sense and spirit of readiness as you're working day in and day out. And just to advance here, tail end. And with that, we will now go into the breakout session topic, but certainly I know we've gone through this content here, but I would like to leave each of you with this. Toastmasters certainly provides you that safe space to practice just that. Writingness, impromptu speaking, leading, communicating with confidence, working on your overall presentation as we continue to grow as individuals, as well as collectively leading and within teams. So with that, I guess I'll turn it back over to you, Kendra or Julie.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'll be opening up into the breakout rooms to discuss the question. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry to end the breakout rooms early. Just want to keep the meeting on schedule.
That was awesome. That was so fun. I had all newbies.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I know that we are down to the wire here, and it's always amazing when we can network in this way. And yeah, so Carrie, finish this out.
Okay, so on the final note, if you would like to join Toastmasters, you may have a corporate club. I would check with your company first to see if one exists. A lot of times the company will reimburse the very nominal dues, but if there isn't one within your company, you can also look for one within your zip code. So there's a QR code you can just scan with your phone, or you can just go to toastmasters.org, type in your zip code, and you can find a community club. And I would just highly recommend. It's such a supportive environment. There's no egos. Everyone's there to support and just help each other grow, whether it's practicing public speaking or even practicing leadership skills. So we just appreciate the opportunity to share this resource and hope that the points that we made were impactful, whether you're entry level or an accomplished podcast speaker like Julie here on the line. Sometimes these reminders just go a long way. So thank you all for having us today.
You bet. Absolutely, Carrie. Thank you and Verlene
you.
both for being here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So real quickly, just a few things to wrap us up here. If you are fairly new to the group and you'd like to take a look at our website, we're foodservicewomensalliance.com. You can email us to, give us some feedback or really anything you might want to know at info@foodservicewomensalliance.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We are Food Service Women's Alliance dash or hyphen FWA. And I think most of you already follow our page, but really would like to invite you, if you haven't already, to join our private group. So if you go to the search in your LinkedIn and you start typing in Food Service Women's Alliance FWA, you get to the M on members, you'll see the members only private group pop up. As long as you're a member of FWA, you will be admitted to that group within 24 hours. There is where I would love us to take this conversation next as we leave this meeting. And really, Verlene, if you and Carrie would head over there, I'd love for people to be able to ask you questions, inquire more about your journey as a Toastmarker. And again, we just all appreciate you being here today on behalf of our entire board and our membership. We appreciate you so very much. Our synergy, our energy, our passion, and our effectiveness are all better when we're together. So thanks again. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.